until the next 30th of November, 2025. It's day 280 of the fourth year since the full-scale invasion began. Welcome to the Daily Situation Report. As always, I warmly welcome the ALGO crew and all channel members. Glad to have you with us again. The Russians gained ground east of Bokros near Munarad at this site. The fighting is still ongoing, but it doesn't affect the shifts in the front as much as we assumed a few weeks ago. Tomorrow I will update the units on the situation map since the Ukrainians have carried out a new rotation. New subunits are stationed outside the city with others fighting inside. For us, in the first case, it simply means that you can still leave and enter the pocket here. And that's through this opening here. That means even though it sometimes gets very difficult, it's still possible to rotate. Otherwise, we wouldn't see any new units here fighting in the area of Monarad. That alone should already disprove one or another theory about a closed box, shouldn't it? But people who spread that don't care about it anyway. So far, it looks as shown on the situation map, including the yellow ones. Still in the combat areas, the situation remains very bad for both sides. One side is, of course, involved in fighting here, which they can hardly win anymore, and the other side is suffering extremely high losses. Ukrainian forces have also managed to gain new ground specifically here at this location. This is about the southern area of Ivanovka and the area here, a bit further south, which was recently still occupied by Russian forces. They were able to recapture and thus liberate it. Deep State reports 53 Russian soldiers killed and 19 captured in the operation. That's almost 30%, so 30% of the Russian losses are prisoners here right now. And that's an unusually high rate, and it's probably determined by the Russians. So on the Ukrainian side, it's very important anyway that they capture Russian soldiers as much as possible and not shoot them. The reason for this is that they can exchange them for a prisoner of war, whom the army depends on. But the Russians often fight until the bitter end. For example, Ukrainians here urge capturing a prisoner instead of shooting him. The Russian soldier is hiding here in the hole in the lower left side. They also tell him to surrender and that they outnumber him. And what does he do then? He throws a grenade out of the hole and then gets shot. Why would someone even engage in such a hopeless fight? Because they're told that if they're captured, the Ukrainians will torture, beat, and abuse them. And of course they don't want that. They're really made to fear what consequences await them if they're captured. And so they'd rather die trying, maybe taking one or two soldiers with them in a heroic death instead of surrendering. And if we now see an unusually high capture rate, then that could be a sign of crumbling morale or extremely poorly trained or supplied troops. We're seeing something like that again now. The families of Russian soldiers who are being used as cannon fodder near Pokrovsk, as they themselves say, are reporting on the conditions during Russia's renewed attacks. They say that they have no water, no food, no dog tags, or proper clothing, and that's why they have to ask for help. They reportedly took part in many combat missions alone, without superiors or leaders. And the woman only knows this because her son was the only survivor of the last attack and was therefore able to report it. Another woman says her husband has been gone for 6 months and that 42 others went to war with him. Then the rhetorical question arises whether one can believe that he or any of the others are still alive. But no, not a single one of them is still alive, according to her statement. And her husband held out the longest for a whole 6 months. And you can subtract a week of basic training right away. And then we're already getting alarmingly close to the 4.5 months average lifespan of a Russian soldier at the front. If he left 6 months ago, then he was a volunteer. He wasn't drafted by the system, he volunteered. Someone volunteered for war and felt supported. No matter if he did that after work over a few glasses of vodka at the next bar, when a Russian recruiter came in and told them the benefits and presented them with the contracts and then persuaded them to sign. Just like we've seen many times before, no matter if it was about deception, no matter if they did it voluntarily, they made this decision themselves, and it's their own fault if they fall in an act of aggression on the side of the aggressor. But his wife and his family, not so much. Sure, can we now condemn all Russians for volunteering for this, or at least the majority, but there are still families behind them. And you have to put yourself in their position as well. And especially in terms of the information they have, just imagine. They're always told, we're winning, everything is great, we're the most powerful and the best. In the end, it's just beating a few insurgents for a lot of money. They send family members there who are killed within days, and sometimes you get nothing back from the government. Of course, you'd feel cheated and be very angry, and that's obviously a huge shock for them as well. And maybe it's even a bigger shock than if they had known what some of their family members had gotten themselves into. The oil refinery near Orsk is on fire once again. With each passing day, it gets more expensive, friends. Just like it is here at Afipsky Oil in the Kuban region, the next refinery was hit again. This isn't the first time. There are exactly 2 countries in this world that make extremely good drones, which are very suitable for this war. Logically, it's the Ukrainians on one side and the Russians on the other. No matter how good or modern a Western or Asian drone may be, no matter how much artificial intelligence or special features it has, hardly any manufacturer manages to produce simple, cheap, and mass-available drones that are adapted to the area of operation and its conditions. Except, of course, Ukraine and Russia. According to the Kiev Post, the country now produces more systems than they actually need. Volunteer training in Latvia and Lithuania indicates Ukrainian drones may be exported in the future. While Ukraine still relies on Western support for ammunition and air defense missiles, since they can't produce those themselves, the country is considered a world leader in drone technology. Ukrainian manufacturers say they constantly improve their systems using feedback from frontline operations. That means there isn't just a single generation of drones. Instead, new developments are built on previous foundations. No, they send them to the front and get feedback right away. They adjust something new, send them back again, adjust something new again, and so on. And then we have a large drone arsenal here, which is almost always involved with the latest developments. Bloomberg estimates annual drone production at about 4 million EW. In addition, the first Ukrainian arms factory abroad is starting operations in Denmark, which supplies the fuel for the Flamingos. Though they have high capacities, many Ukrainian manufacturers aren't operating at full capacity. And this is the source, TechBoss, in Ukraine. And for this reason, they are also open to export and cooperation models. That would be absolutely advantageous for us in the West, I have to tell you right away. Those simple, inexpensive, mass-produced drones being built over there are lacking here. Our manufacturers set their priorities on completely different things, like artificial intelligence optimization, range optimization, and so on. Whereas over there, the motto is simply as cheap, as simple, and as fast as possible. Russia is also advancing technologically as the Russians are making progress like Ukraine. An anti-drone unit called Rubicon is increasingly detecting the positions of Ukrainian units. And not just the units, but especially the drone pilots. Ukrainian armed forces told the Financial Times that drones are easily replaced, but skilled pilots are not. And since the Russians already have rather poor anti-drone measures on their side anyway, they are now specifically trying to track down the pilots and simply hunt them before attempting to shoot down every single drone from the sky. And that's especially effective with this unit. The Wall Street Journal reports that United States Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Russian negotiator Kirill Dmitriev were apparently not alone during their talks in Miami at the end of October as part of diplomatic efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Although the meeting initially produced the heavily criticized and later softened 28-point plan which proposed a resolution to the conflict in favor of Moscow. However, these investigations by the Wall Street Journal suggest that, at the same time, far-reaching economic projects were being prepared. According to this, Witkoff, Kushner, and Dmitriev developed a comprehensive concept for an economic restart between the United States and Russia. The alleged peace plan was less about pursuing geopolitical goals and was primarily intended to enable investment projects and build on agreements that Trump and Putin are said to have discussed during their meeting in Alaska in August. A key aspect was using about $300 billion in frozen Russian central bank funds for joint investment projects, including in Ukraine. The parties also reportedly considered jointly developing Arctic resources, including rare earths, gas, and oil. A possible resumption of previously halted energy projects, such as Nord Stream 2, was also discussed. Apparently, it was precisely for this purpose that the United States was intended to play a leading role in steering the economic reconstruction of Ukraine. According to the Wall Street Journal, the businessman Gentry for Beach, a longtime confidant of Donald Trump and a major campaign donor, could particularly benefit from the planned Arctic projects. Earlier this year, Beach expressed interest in acquiring the rest of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline infrastructure. This was confirmed by government spokesperson Stephen Haberstreit. European intelligence agencies report that Kremlin-linked oligarchs like Gennady Timoshenko, Yuri Kovalchuk, Boris, and Arkady Rotenberg are already in talks with United States companies about gas and mining projects. Meanwhile, ExxonMobil held talks with Rosneft in Qatar that summer about rejoining the Sakhalin gas project on the Pacific Island. Witkoff told the Wall Street Journal he believes a comprehensive economic deal with Russia would automatically bring peace. However, European government representatives are critical of this. Poland's Prime Minister Tusk said this initiative isn't a peace plan, but a business deal between Russia and the United States of America at Ukraine's expense. Meanwhile, Witkow is planning another trip to Moscow next week to meet with Putin. This is his 6th visit to Russia this year. He has not made a trip to Ukraine so far. And that is an absolute stab in the back for every Ukrainian and every European. Here, decisions are being made not only about the future of Ukraine based on financial ambitions and the interests of the United States of America, but also about negotiating Europe's position of power. This is also being ignored and happening behind their backs. My dear viewers, can you feel the betrayal? It's actually closer than some people want to admit. Yesterday, we looked at 2 sinking tankers that were attacked by Ukrainian drones in the Black Sea. Today, a 3rd Shadow Fleet tanker was added, but off Senegal's coast in Africa, not the Black Sea. There is the ship Mersin, which has just started to sink and is also on fire. A reason for this has not been given so far, as the circumstances are mysterious. The Russian energy company Rosneft has reported a significant decline in net profit for the first 9 months of 2025. The result fell by around 70% to 277 billion rubles, which is about 3.57 billion United States dollars. The company cited the current high interest rates, lower oil prices, a stronger national currency, and increased spending on anti-terrorism security measures as the main reasons. Rosneft says these factors have clearly affected profits in several areas. That's the Russian perspective. In reality, of course, the actual reason for this loss is the sanctions against the oil companies and all the Ukrainian drone attacks on refineries. But of course, the operator can't officially state that. A few months ago, I showed you in a report that the Ukrainians had started using electronic countermeasures against glide bombs. Between September and November, according to their own statements, Ukrainian air defense forces were able to destroy or divert up to 100 Russian guided bombs using this method. Currently, new countermeasures and weapons are being tested to reduce the effectiveness of the precision munitions dropped by Russia from the air. Special thanks to the Algo crew, channel members, especially Lieutenant Colonel Reneka. As always, thank you for listening. Subscribe, like, comment, and see you in the next report.